Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, and today we're going to take a look at all of the core set cards in Arkham Horror the card game, as well as some from the revised core. It's been, well, 8 years since the game came out, and about 3 or so years since the revised core came out. So I want to do a little bit of a retrospective. How are the cards that came out in that set that are really supposed to be cards that you might use in every deck or in a lot of the decks continuing forward? It is a core after all. So this is going to be sort of a tier list, but sort of not really. I've just sort of tagged all these different lines here with a rating for the card. Basically, how do we view the card today with the larger card pool? At the top here, we've got still one of the best. So some of these I would say are beyond just staples. So really strong cards that I think about putting in all of my decks. Next is still good, so cards that have just been really solid for what they do and are worth thinking about, of course, in any deck. Trending up, cards actually have gotten better over time, and there's a few of these which I think makes it really interesting when there's a new investigator or the archetype that it seems to belong to gets fleshed out a little bit more, or just the trends in the game maybe make some of these cards more useful. Trending down is the opposite, a card that maybe was really useful at the beginning, but because we have an expanded card pool, because campaigns have pushed things in a different direction, they're not quite as good anymore. I'll comment on this. This still could be a good card, but maybe just a little bit less useful. Still just okay. These are cards that I think are fine, really. They weren't like awful or unplayable at the beginning, but really just have been, I don't want to say deck filler, but they do the job. Job isn't really that good, but hasn't really changed over time. And then a bit niche for core. I think there's a few cards here that maybe haven't gotten better or worse, but really belong to a few archetypes, especially those with the investigator box that it came out with, the core set investigators, of course, but don't really see play much. But they're still good where they are, right? I don't think that makes it a bad card. However, the last list here, tier list line we have is bad then, bad now. So these are cards that um, maybe don't really match the game that well, or just are overcosted, or something like that. Um, we'll talk about those as we get there. But some cards, it's interesting as we'll see throughout the video. A lot of them really, I think, belong up at the top, and they did a great job of making very useful cards. And then there's a few that are just totally forgettable, and you might not even remember they were even in here. Part of this, I think, is if you ever try to play the game without using the core set cards, you'll find that there's a lot of meat in here that you just are missing. So let's take a look at these cards. I'll talk a little bit about them, and I'm not gonna rank them, I don't think, in these tiers because they're really just labels. They're not really tiers. But yeah, let's just get right into it. And first one, these aren't in exactly the right order. Sorry. First one, though, belongs right at the bottom. First Aid, level 0, is a bad card. Is this healing that really does not work? Why not? Because it costs you 2 resources, an action to put down, and then another action to heal 1 horror or damage at a time. From any investigator, which I guess is okay, over time healing has been more important, but this card is pretty bad. It's just too slow. It's just too expensive. There are better healing cards out there. Unfortunately, very few of them in the original core set. So while you kind of need healing in the game, I see why they've really pushed it recently, of course. This is not a good solution. Even with investigators like Carolyn Fern and Vincent Lee who really actively want to heal, this doesn't do it for me. All right, next up is Guard Dog, and this is still good. Still really, really good, I think. Maybe even one of the best, but I'm going to stick it here for now. It's gotten even better as it's been easier to tank enemy attacks, and we have investigators like Daniela who really want Guard Dog. There's an upgrade now, of course, that came out in the Scarlet Keys, but the level 0 is still really, really good. Like, this is an excellent card for dealing testless damage, which I think is an important part of your game plan when dealing with enemies. It's relatively cheap for the amount of soak there, but of course you're using the health on the dog to do damage back. All right, let's move on. Next we have another bad healing card. So this is a card that was maybe for Daisy because she was had tomes, right? She's got the free tome action. Maybe because she has very little health, that this card was meant to help that. But again, all you do after the test is heal 1 damage. Again, the extra action that Daisy has makes this like kind of okay, but it's still pretty bad. Where is it on my list here? Down here. Okay, it was bad then. It's bad now. Sorry. Even for Vincent, right? There's an upgrade to this one, which is, I think, a lot better because it heals potentially 2 damage at once, and I think that's actually a decent card to add into your deck at low XP, but 1 at a time is bad. Okay, Working Hunch. This is an interesting one. I think that this card has been trending down. I don't think it's a bad card, but to me, having a card that gets you 1 clue, even though it's fast, even though it's testless, meaning you get to avoid things like locked door, don't have to worry about the high shroud location. I don't really want a card that only gets me 1 clue. I want to get 2 clues out of cards, even if it is so testless clues or else otherwise. Even if it's fast, I just am not certain that as part of your deck this is worth a whole card slot, especially with the whole card pool. With a smaller card pool, I think it's fine. I also recognize that it's part of some decks that just try to draw their whole deck every turn or two, and this being fast and relatively cheap really can just like go infinite, right? You can get every clue on the board if you're able to move and cycle your deck. Putting horror, of course, on like an ally or something, and just sort of repeating all of that. So I get that. I get that it's very strong for that reason, but 1 clue in a normal deck for me isn't quite enough. There are good places for it still. Joe Diamond really wants this in his hunch deck. It's free clue, but doesn't really have the opportunity cost of a slot in your deck quite as much as it would in just your 30 card deck. So I think it's like decent at level 0. It's just not really something that I want to put in my deck, unless maybe I'm playing solo. 2 player, I'm a little iffy still. 3 or 4 player, I don't think it really is worth it. Solo, probably still good. All right, let's keep going. Deduction. Yeah, this is the new art. Yeah, so this is just 1 clue or 2, right? So what's the difference between this and Working a Hunch? Well, good question. It is basically a testless clue. It's just part of a different test that you do have to pass. I think though, because you can combo with other kinds of investigation, this is a little better than Working a Hunch. It's also likely that you're going to upgrade this. So I think it's going to go into still good. It trending down here for Working Hunch to me is just because I think with more limited options, this doesn't look quite as good. But deduction, I think, is such as just a staple for not having to pay the 2 resources as well. That's kind of where I'm at with that. I like spending resources on other things. In earlier campaigns and with a smaller card pool, it's harder to spend, I think, your resources on things that are really worth it. But nowadays, that's not the case. Even though it's easier to make money now. So, I'm even trying to convince myself of the trending down for this one. So, feel free to argue with me. Deduction, good card. Burglary. This was always a bad card. This was bad then, is bad now. The problem with this card is you investigate, you do not get any clues from it, you get 3 resources. But you had to spend an action and a resource to put this down. You need to find a low shroud location where you're willing to do this, and you don't need that much money. You're not going to be spending turn after turn doing this. Yes, if you're Rex Murphy, you still get a clue off of succeeding by two during a burglary investigation. But I don't think this is something I've ever wanted to put in a deck outside of Rex. Again, if you got spare actions, um, it's illicit. I guess there's some more stuff you can do with that these days, but I don't think this really belonged in the core either. Let's see, who could play this? Wendy, she had three intellect. Skids, three intellect. So passing the test itself is kind of hard, but also, what would you do to pass the test? You throw resources and cards away just to get resources back. Um, Probably not worth it. There's an upgrade to this, so I don't think this has been getting better. I actually think the upgrade is kind of anyway. All right, let's keep going. Hard Knocks. So this is a number of cards that allow you to spend money, maybe money you just got off of burglary, to help pass tests. Now, it costs an action. Two resources to put it down just to get any use out of it. I'm not totally sure that that's really good. However, there are upgrades for this. There's a level 2, there's a level 4, which level 2, this cost is now 0. Level 4, it gives you 2 resources basically every round to play with, to spend without spending your own resources, even though you could continue to spend your own resources on it too. So, of the 5 of these, there's 5, and we'll see them all. I think this one's one I've not really played much. The reason why is because, actually, I'm going to put it in trending down. The reason why is because the investigators who want to fight tend to have other ways um, to boost their combat. And if you want to use agility, there's another card called Streetwise, which is just a lot better than this. So this one I think is getting a little bit worse, although it never was good. You know, I'm not going to rate all of them the same way though. All right, I think I'm happy with that right there. Let's go to the next one. Overpower. This is a skill. These are all the revised core art, by the way. That's why these are first. Okay, Overpower, I think, is going to go in. It could go in still good. It's on the way down, though, because of cards like Daring, which basically are the same thing, but a little bit better. Let's see. Where are you? I think this is also sort of trending down. Not a bad card. I absolutely include this all the time. But I'm going to leave it in trending down. I think just because there's other options. Now, I think all of the core set skill cards have this problem that there are a lot better options nowadays. I mean, the masks are kind of one of them, but they're still extremely good and useful cards that you should think about including in your deck. I'm just not sure that if you have, say, Overpower and Daring from Dream Eaters, I believe, in your card pool, that you would ever want to not put Daring in over Overpower, with the exception of Down the Rabbit Hole, which allows you to upgrade to Overpower 2. Trending down. Scavenging. Oh boy. Okay. Without talking about the taboo right now, which is a story for another time, I think this is going to be like trending up, right? Early on, there weren't a whole lot of ways to succeed by two while investigating. Not a whole lot of investigators were able to do it, not in with Survivor access anyways, until Min probably, and Wendy when she got some better cards. But there weren't as many items to recur, and the ones that you could pick up from your discard pile, not all that important to do so. Nowadays, you get these scavenging loops where you're basically recurring all kinds of stuff that have uses, that have things like old keyring that you really, really want to use over and over again, and scavenging is a big part of it. Now, it does just put it back in your hand. You do need to take the action to play it again, so I think the card still is pretty fair, taboo aside, but I think it's just gotten better and can only get better when the card pool gets bigger, just more different items that you could pick up. All I need to say about that. Baseball bat. I think this is a fine card. I think this one is still Uh, Still good. We're going to put it here. The reason why is there weren't a whole lot of weapons at level 0, and there are more, of course, now in Survivor. You know, maybe this goes in trending up, just because in the first couple of expansions, you had Ashcan Pete, you had Wendy who could play this, uh, Agnes, and none of them really wanted to, right? And nowadays we got more fighters who can make use of baseball bat. It has an upgrade that's much better. I mean, this card is truly annoying because when you draw this skull or auto fail, it ruins your day. But I'm glad that they have a pretty solid weapon for survivors in the core set that you always have access to. So, I mean, that +2 combat's really, really good. I think I'm going to put it in trending up, although it gets outclassed at higher um, XP levels, which makes sense, right? It's a level 0 card. Okay. Unexpected Courage. I think this is the last one of our weird art ones. This one's definitely for me trending down. And the reason why is because it doesn't, unlike the other skills, it doesn't have a replacement with a card, right? You're not just committing it and getting a card back. So it doesn't help you get through your deck. And 2 wild icons for me personally is not enough. It's not a bad card. Absolutely not. It's a great card in the moment when you actually need it. But every class nowadays has other ways of getting +2 to a skill test repeatably, not just on one test, right? That's why this card is, um, I think, just not going to be in as many decks. By the way, you probably noticed this. We have Old Book of Lore out here instead of the medical text. Let's make that change. Anyway, let's go to the next card. First Aid level 3. So this is a reprint from Path to Carcosa. This one is different from the level 0 in that it heals a damage and a horror at once. It's got 4 supplies, so you do this basically you're healing 8 units of damage or horror. You can't split it though. So you are choosing an investigator or an ally, you remove 1 damage, 1 horror token from it. That's it. It's kind of funny that they put this into the core set, maybe because the other cards were so bad. But not that many people really want this effect. Carolyn, reasonable. Vincent, reasonable. Kate Winthrop can take it. It's science. I don't think she wants it. I think this is going to go. I mean, am I saying since 3 years ago? I think it's still just okay. Since Carcosa, it's probably gotten a little bit better, but 2 resources and 3 XP. It's slotless. It's not an item, though. I wish it were an item. Will to Survive. I think this card is criminally underplayed. It's really strong. It's just really expensive, and you like it better in investigators who have more than just 3 actions that you're taking tests on. So Wendy, of course, can do this. This is going to go probably in steel, still good. I think this is not got. I mean, it's gotten better in that it's easier to find investigators who can spend an entire turn taking tests, I suppose. Getting extra actions is a thing that you can do across classes. So not just Wendy with Leo DeLuca. Can still use this okay. I don't know if she can get the extra action unless she purposely fails a test that's really hard. So maybe she can. You just don't reveal a token, you still fail. I don't know. I think it's still a very good card. Vicious Blow. So, this card lives with deduction, and it's possibly better because you really want to. I mean, I'm rating these based on how I think they've changed over time, but I'm still giving you my thoughts. So, dealing an extra damage to an enemy, going from 2 damage to 3 damage is kind of where this card, I think, becomes a lot better. So honestly, because there's more health with enemies, especially more odd health enemies, I think I think this card has gotten better. And better than deduction in that matter, because, well, you really want to be able to get rid of an enemy before it attacks you or attacks someone else, and this helps you do it. Getting clues, more than one clue at once, is nice, but usually not that important. The consequences of not passing a test or dealing enough uh, damage are really great, right? But getting an extra clue to clear off a location, it does matter, right? There are cases where you want to get two clues and then move away from the location, and then you don't get attacked by a hunter coming in or something like that. Is important, but I think the damage is a little bit better. And like I said, more important given that it's it's more likely to run into three health enemies. Evidence. It's Roland on a card. I don't play this card. I don't think it's a bad card. It falls into the same trap of it's only one clue, and sometimes there's no clues where you're attacking enemies because that's not why you're always attacking enemies. For Roland, it's good because you're doubling up on his abilities, so you can clear off locations in two-player pretty quickly. I don't think it's gotten any better over time, so it might live in just okay. Again, one clue, one card. It is a little bit better in that there's a level 1 version now, so you could upgrade to it, but dodge. Um, Dodge is not getting any better over time. There's two exceptions, right? Diana, who loves any sort of cancel, and Daniela, right? Because she's good at canceling things, and still she would still do her damage back. However, the whole idea of just canceling an enemy attack for one card is not too attractive to me. I think that you can just tank the damage instead. You should be planning on doing that in general because what if you don't have this card in hand, right? You don't want to have this be your game plan about how you survive boss attacks, especially. Not a bad card though. It's just not one I'm going to include in that many decks, um, except for those. All right, Dynamite Blast. I almost want to put this in still one of the best. It's still very good. It's still an incredible card. The 5 resources makes it really tough. It's gotten better because it's easier, of course, to afford it, but I think it's still just a really good effect. I played a game earlier today, actually, where I don't remember how many enemies we had. It was possibly 4, and at least one of them had 3 health. So just removing them from the table, even taking the damage, is a way to get yourself out of a hole. Like, it's a big deal in this game to remove several enemies, aloof enemies, right, from the game, and not have to worry about passing tests, engaging, all that kind of stuff. You just take your 3 damage and worry about how to crawl out of that particular problem later. I think this is still really good. And it was really good in the core too, right? It solved a lot of problems. All right. Physical training. I think this card is much better than Hard Knocks. I don't know if this goes to trending up. I take this a lot from our Guardians, especially if they have money, which is a tough ask on Guardian, but nowadays, not as much. You can find ways to get money. But the level 2 and 4, especially, level 4 physical training is so good that sometimes you include this in your deck, the level 0, with Down the Rabbit Hole or some other cards that help you upgrade. It's just that one. Other things that might just remind you in your deck that you want to upgrade this. Is it really truly trending up or still just okay? Um, I'm gonna leave it in trending up for now. Maybe a little crazy. Machete. It's still one of the best. Level 0 weapon. Most of the time, you're only engaged with one enemy at a time. This helps you get rid of that one enemy before you draw the next one. Its cost is, not much, right? It's a really good card. I don't know what else to say about that, but it holds up. You have to have reasons not to play Machete. Maybe you're going for a gun build, maybe you're doing a two-handed weapon. It's still incredible. I think you want to include it at the beginning just in case you don't draw other weapons that might be your bigger game plan. 45 automatic is still a good card. I don't think it's as good as Machete. Obviously, it has some synergy with other ammunition stuff, which we'll see later. Um, it's expensive. It does 8 damage as long as you pass your tests. We'll talk about that later. But it's a good card. Um, there haven't actually been very many level 0 firearms for Guardian, especially. It's this and the Colt. Is there anything else? I don't think so. Yeah, so okay, that this is the only other option you have. We still play it all the time. It's a perfectly fine card. It's not one of the best though. I feel like you can do better with other weapons that don't have ammo, but there you go. B-Cop level 0. This is also still good. Again, your 2 level 0 allies, I think across the board. No, you got Lonnie Ritter. Lonnie Ritter and Rogue. You've got B-Cop and Greta Wagner. That's it. That's it if you want +1 combat. Those are your 3 options. So this is kind of your default one. It's the cheapest. It's in Guardian, obviously. It's got decent soak. You don't really want to use the ability to discard it for 1 damage, but you can. You can. In fact, that you do it all the time, but it's there for the +1 combat because passing your fight actions is so important in this game. It's kind of where I went with Vicious Blow. Um, yeah, it's not a great card, right? You want to upgrade out of this as soon as you can to something better. We'll talk about that better thing in a second. But I think it was always good and it still sees a lot of play. Extra ammunition. So we've got some upgraded cards now. Um, I'm pretty happy with this card still. It's not a card I play often because I don't think the ammo builds are that good, but I think it does the job. It's good for obviously when you have weapons, obviously firearms that have um, a lot more to them than just the 45 automatic. So refilling a shotgun or any other sort of thing is really good. This is fine for skids. There's other ways to do this, but I think this card is still good. Police badge. Okay, so has it gotten better since it was first released? Yes. So playing it in York is like okay, right? You can get the extra actions. The +1 willpower is fine. I think there's still better things you can do in York. I don't think this one sees too much play. Maybe you would use it in Carson. There's better things you can do. I don't think it's really found a perfect home. Diana? I just don't think the resource cost and the extra actions are quite as important. I mean, there's not a whole other competition in the accessory slot, but you don't have to fill your accessory slot all the time, right? Just play other cards. So I think it's still okay. B Cop 2, it's still one of the best, right? In fact, it's gotten better, but it was always really good. It's gotten better because investigators like York can recur B Cops from the discard pile. It's gotten better because Vincent Lee, who can't take this card, but Vincent Lee could heal the B Cop using cards. In fact, we get cards in the very next expansion that heals from allies, 2 damage from allies, I believe. But a lot of different investigators can take advantage of this, right? Anything that can heal from allies, but even if you're not, uh, the free ability to just do an extra damage is so powerful, and that's why I think the vicious blow again is just even better than deduction is most of the time. Back to deduction, I mean the advantage that seekers have of it cycling through their decks more often and other things like practice makes perfect makes deduction go up in value now too. I'm gonna still leave it there, but B Cop is just fantastic. You can play this in every Guardian that does any damage, and you're very happy. It's just not supplanted by anything. I don't think there's very many level 2 allies in Guardian. Are there any outside of B Cop? Probably. But anyway, let's go on to the next one, which is I've had worse, level 4. Um, this one came out in Dunwich, so it's sort of fine to evaluate it for when it came out. It's not a good card. Sometimes you're happy to see it at the end of a campaign. For example, canceling this much damage or horror does not happen that often. Getting the resources, they're good, but you tend to want them before you get yourself stuck in that kind of mess. I'm gonna put it in like it's not a good card. I don't think it ever was. I think it was not something that was that important. Maybe like even trending down. Maybe trending down because I can see that in Dunwich it made sense to have something that canceled half of the damage from Beyond the Veil, and I guess it does it. But level 2, I've had worse, which came out in Circle and Done, should have been the reprint in this set. It wasn't. I don't know why not, but it probably should have been. Okay, Shotgun is the next one. I think this is still good. Um, I think it was always been good, right? It's not a card I play often because the 2 ammo on it is kind of scary, but there is enough support in it, I think, that in the set for sure that makes it playable. And then there's been more support since. Maybe it's trending up. Maybe these shotgun builds are better with custom ammunition that came out in Scarlet Keys, as well as other things that help you find the card in the first place. Really, it's a boss killer, right? You want to hang on to it until you get to a point where you need to do all the damage. All right. Right as Seeking. Why do we have a Mystic card with a lot of XP in it? This card I think is still one of the best cards. It came out in Dunwich. Actually, it didn't. It came out in Return to Dunwich, and now it's in the revised core. It's a really, really good card. I think this is a strong effect to get +2 willpower and get 2 clues for any Mystic, not even ones that are always getting clues. I think this is a. I've played it in Daisy, which is strange, but no, it belongs in basically any Mystic that has 4 or 5 willpower and is trying to get more than that even. I think it's still one of the best cards out there. The downside of ending your whole turn is to me you play around it. That's all there is to it. You just play around it. Okay. Fearless. This is a core set card that is a skill that heals you. Heal you for 1 horror. Um, okay, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to take horror nowadays, especially with shriveling and the upgraded shrivelings. That this is, I think, probably better than when it came out. Its upgrade is also actually quite good. One icon is, I think this is a card that I would say is trending up simply because things like arcane research and getting mental trauma is not unheard of, right? And just healing that off is pretty good. There's a lot of weaknesses that deal you horror now, weaknesses that make you heal horror. I think this is a trending up card. Drawn to the Flame. So 2 clues for a random encounter card. Costs nothing. This one's tough to evaluate as well because while it's something that I don't often play, it has a lot of raw power, right? It, like I said before, I want to get 2 clues out of an action, and a card for that matter. I think it's still good. You're not unhappy to see this card. It, and I think the encounter deck being less scary means it's actually even better than it used to be. Always was good. Yeah, I mean, again, the trending up and trending down are not necessarily mutually exclusive with the cards being good or bad. War Protection. This one is a really, really good card. I'm going to put this in still good. I don't think it's one of the best cards, and I don't think it's trending down, although I think that encounter cards in general are becoming a little bit more manageable. They're still usually one, not just Ancient Evils, still usually something you want to cancel. You're thinking about, is this the thing that will end me, right? Discarding a bunch of cards from hand, discarding an expensive asset in play. I think this card is still good. Actually, as a side, I think the level 2 version has lost um, some of its use over time, but that's not till Carcosa. Blinding Light. I have to read this card. I don't really remember what it does. I never play it. Evade. This uses willpower instead of agility. If you succeed, deal 1 damage to the enemy just evaded. If a bad symbol token is revealed during this evasion attempt, lose 1 action this turn. Um, I don't think this is a good card. It lets you evade. That's good. Now, for Agnes, it's a +2 over her agility. For Daisy, it's a +1 for 2 resources and a card. You do a damage if you succeed. I don't think it helps you succeed, though. It needs like a +1 or something on it. I'm going to say it's a bad card. I've never played it. But I don't really see. I mean, maybe there was a usage in the core where you had nothing else, so maybe it's trending down or something, but I don't think it was ever probably worth it. This card is our first a bit niche card, and it should be obvious why. This card is for Agnes. It allows her to deal 1 damage 4 different times by taking horror and putting it onto her investigator card, and she gets some resources as consolation prize, I suppose. Not consolation, but I guess consolation for taking the horror. But that's fine. It's a good effect, right? Using it during the enemy phase, using it during the Mythos phase, during upkeep, right? You can use it to because she only has that ability once per phase. Uh, Good card for her. For everyone else, if your name is Carolyn, you like this. I played this in Charlie for fun as kind of fodder for summon servitor to have something to discard. And then he can take a lot of horror just to tank things, and sometimes getting the extra resources is fine. But this is not something you really want to think about playing unless you're exactly Agnes and Carolyn. You have to be something doing something kind of strange otherwise to want to put it in your um, in your deck. Otherwise, just play emergency cash, right? I already have emergency cash. Play something else in the whole card pool, right? This really doesn't have a home unless you're playing one of those decks. All right, next, Arcane Initiate, still one of the best cards out there. Free draw, probably. You're not going to play unless you have spells, right? Free draw for some number of turns. You're going to whiff sometimes, but you can play this card during the witching hour, so right before Doom will advance the agenda anyway, so it's Doom, doesn't actually matter. Or you can play it during a very long agenda and you think you're going to kill it off. So it's still one of the best cards out there. I don't think I need to say much more. Out of level 0 Mystic Allies, there's still not much out there, in my opinion, that you just would generically put into a deck. So the fact that this is in the core, fantastic. Scrying, on the other hand, it's not a terrible card. I have played it in Gloria. But the action just to look is probably not worth it. It's good that it has only 1 resource cost, so I've played it in Lily just to throw arcane slot items down or assets down to fill up a dragon pool. I don't think it's a good card. Let's put it in bad. Next, Holy Rosary, still one of the best cards. It does exactly what you want to do. The extra horror for soak for Agnes, for everyone else who's maybe taking shriveling horror or water protection horror. Really good, and it's pretty cheap, right? Next is Arcane Studies. I rate this one better than Hard Knocks for sure. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of this card in a lot of investigators, actually, because those 2 stats, willpower and intellect, are extremely useful all over the place. Not just for investigating sometimes, right? You might need this for mystics to pass treacheries. So I think this card it always was good. It's really good in Carolyn also. I played it there. I think it's trending up. The level 2 and level 4 are really good, of course, too. Also easier to make money. I just don't think that Hard Knock stats are quite what the class as a whole has been using. Shriveling still one of the best cards for weapons. It's cost 3, doesn't give you any bonus, but willpower tends to be something you're stacking anyway in Mystic, so you don't need it like the 45 automatic does. You already start with 5 of Agnes. I mean, don't play it in Daisy, but unless you really have to. Let's leave it at that. I think that the downside is real, but that's what these spells need to have, and it's good. Mind Wipe. Fast play after a phase begins. Choose a non-elite enemy at your location. Treat its chosen enemy's printed text box as if it were blank except for traits until the end of the phase. It's not a good card because you don't really want to do this that often. When you have it in hand and you like see something on the board, you're like, aha, I can use Mind Wipe. You feel really good, but that shouldn't be your plan, right? It's not a good plan for dealing with enemies or with the general board state. Obviously, there's scenarios that you can tech for where this is really good and it does a lot of things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. But you probably shouldn't put this in your deck. Okay. There's a level 3 version too. I forget if it's in the core or just in the return to Night of the Solid. I guess we'll find out. Blinding Light. It's an upgrade. The upgrade is you do 2 damage instead of 1, and if you draw one of those symbols, you lose an action and take a horror. Costs only 1. That's okay. For level 2, getting the extra damage is nice. To me, the extra horror is not a big deal in Mystic. 1 resource is fine. I don't think I've played it though. It's okay. Scrying level 3. Okay, this time it's fast. You don't have to spend an action to activate it. Spend a charge. You might take a horror now. I played it in Gloria. I feel like this is a bit niche for core. That's where I'm going to throw this one into. I don't think I mean, it's not a bad effect, but I don't think this is something you really want to be doing. Maybe this is for Agnes also in the core to randomly deal horror to enemies. I don't know. Book of Shadows. This is not a great card. I've played it. 4 resources, you add charges to spells. There's other ways to do this these days. I think the level 1 version is absolutely horrible. This one is at least giving you an extra arcane slot, which is maybe okay. It's gotten worse. I've not used the trending down in a while because there's other ways and better ways to get arcane slots. And the charges are not that important. There we go. That's why I have that tier. Ooh, Grotesque Statue. I think this was always a good card. I think people just sort of forgot about it. And it is expensive. 4 XP to make sure you pass tests is nothing though. It's really good with the scavenging loop that you can do, especially in gym. This has gotten better over time. I think it's just better on average with token manipulation, which didn't really exist in the core. But just picking the best token you want is still a strong effect. So I think this is still good and probably has been getting better. When you really want to say you're doing a bless or curse build and you really want one of those tokens, there was more payoff for that kind of thing rather than just passing the tests now compared to before. Neutral cards. So we talked about Overpower already. I think this card is still really good and probably doesn't need to go anywhere else. Again, like all of the other cards that are the core set skills, it's gotten a little bit worse because there's other ways to get +2, but this one draws you a card. Mystics really want this. The encounter deck really wants this. So I think that's where it is. Manual Dexterity, actually, I think it's been getting better. It used to be that you didn't need to use agility for anything. and there weren't that many ways to take advantage of it from the player card standpoint or the encounter deck. So this has actually been trending up for me. A lot of investigators, I think, that have even 3 agility might think about this, especially in certain campaigns, but um, this card is actually pretty good. Next one should be perception, right? Yeah. This one's always been good. The draw means more in Seeker because you can draw more things. The level 2 version of this is absolutely incredible, right? So having this as a placeholder is fine. There's other ways, of course, to draw cards in Seeker, but adding, like having a critical mask of just drawing and drawing and drawing means that these are all cards are all better. And +2 to investigates is, I think, really, really strong. Getting you to that, I mean, +2 in general is good, but getting you to that like above 4 of the difficulty of its skill test on standard, this helps you do it, right? And you'll be taking lots more investigate actions than you will take other sorts of things, especially in Seeker. So great card. I would even consider it in, like Leo Anderson, I think. But I probably wouldn't actually do it. Anyway, emergency cash, still one of the best. I think this one's still one of the best. Let's grab the card here. And the reason why is because money is always been important. Playing this early, always been a strong opening hand thing to do. I think there are more assets nowadays, so I think it's even better than it used to be, but I think it's still one of those top cards, and it doesn't it just makes everything else easier if you have your resources. It's notable when you don't have ability to gain resources. Yes, there are tons of other ways to get resources nowadays, but you still are going to think about including emergency cash in pretty much every deck as an addition to other things, or maybe instead of things that are maybe aren't as reliable. But there are some other cooler ways to get money now. I think it's still one of the best cards. Knife. Knife is not one of the best cards. Knife has gotten worse just because you don't need it. You may have needed it just as an extra weapon in the core set in Night of the Zealot, and you didn't want to be stuck without some way to boost your combat a little bit and have that emergency way to do 2 damage. Yes, you can do some fun things with York. Yes, I've seen people play this in other investigators just as a placeholder till they get a better weapon, but every class except for a Seeker, who shouldn't be playing this in the first place, has some way to do damage, and this is going to be better than Knife. I'm not going to say anything else. Flashlight, on the other hand, always was a good card because basically you were going to move to a location that had 2 shroud and get 3 free clues. That's kind of how you play Flashlight. However, there's a lot more ways to take advantage of reduced difficulty of tests. So I think it probably always was good, but my eyes for this card have been opened up quite a bit more. Where's Flashlight on my list down here? Yeah, right at the bottom. I think this has been trending up just because of difficulty reduction being more important. The level 2 emergency cash. This is a reprint from Dunwich. I think this is still a good card. I like that it's in the revised core. I don't think it's amazing. I think it's just still good. But if you need something to do with your XP, this will do the trick, I think. Bulletproof vest. This is interesting. So, early on, if you needed to extend your health and sanity pools, you have this card and Elder Sign Amulet, other than your, of course, allies. 4 damage, 4 health is a lot, right? 3 XP is also a lot. But what I really want to talk about is the body slot. There's a lot of other things you might put in the body slot these days, other coats, other things that are like backpacks. You can still make this work. Flamethrower obviously will take up the body slot one way or another. Is it better now than it used to be? So, like, Harvey had a build where this was his way of dealing with his weakness. He now has other ways of dealing with that. Um, this is decent with Lonnie Ritter, but you probably don't need to have anything that has more than two health for Lonnie. I think this is I, I think this is trending down. I don't think this is as important as it used to be. There's just a whole lot other options. And it's even more the case with the next card, which is Elder Sign Amulet, because it takes up the accessory slot. It's a relic. I guess there's other things that care about you having relics. Wit Green for one. But I don't think this card is that useful. There's going to be a lot of other places to soak your horror. If you're just playing with the core set, I mean, obviously it's this. But I think there's other things you'd rather put in the accessory slot these days. And uh, Relic Hunter exists. We'll get to that in a second. But um, yeah, I think this one also just is trending down. It needs to exist, though. It's not a bad design, but this is just what happens when you have a larger card pool. Some cards just get pushed out, I think, because you want to be able to use this effect on in-class cards, and neutral cards are always going to be a little bit worse at that. 3 XP is a tough ask, I think. Relic Hunter itself. So I mean, it's trending up, right? It came out in Dunwich, reprinted in the revised core, and this card, I think, originally was pretty meh, right? There weren't enough accessories for people to use. Nowadays, I think it's almost an auto include for mystics, probably a lot of other investigators, rogues that want the lucky cigarette case and something else. 3 XP permanent is not a big ask. Charisma itself is, I think I'm gonna stick it into still one of the best because it was always really good. Dungeon itself had a lot of story allies with the campaign, so you kind of always wanted this, but I have not stopped putting this in my deck at some point. There's other ways to do this. There's a few other ways to get multiple ally slots nowadays, but none of them to me are as good as charisma. And even for Relic Hunter, I mean, while I think it's been trending up overall, Occult Reliquary, which kind of gives you the same effect, maybe makes it a little bit less good. But I do just want to point out that Charisma's always been excellent. Opportunist. Now we're into Rogue cards. Rogue cards had a problem in that none of these cards are particularly good on their own, especially with skids. So, Opportunist is a card that if you commit it, you need to succeed by more than what the card gave you, a lot more, to get it back. Then why are you committing it? Because maybe otherwise you would have failed by one. That's the best you can do, right? Unexpected Courage exists. You should probably have that instead of this. Maybe you have both. I don't know. Its place really is fuel for the succeed by X archetype, and especially if you get something out of committee cards. Period. So Winifred, you play it in Winifred. You maybe don't even upgrade it in Winifred. There's an upgrade in Dunwich. I don't think this card is that good. It actually, I'm gonna throw it into a bit niche. I think I mean, it's still pretty bad, right? But that's okay. It's a card that gets better when you have many more effects that care about you succeeding. And the problem with succeeding by a bunch, the problem with the core is that there's not a whole lot that helps you do that. Okay. Elusive. This one has been tabooed because it was so good. Um, I admit that I've not played it much. So the taboo is to move to a connecting location. The original one is you move anywhere on the map that's revealed, which is wacky, right? Let's just throw it in still good. I don't want to say much more about it. Sneak attack. This is still just okay. The effect is nice, right? Because it could be um, a way to avoid spending ammo. You just spend 2 resources and you've basically shot something. The problem with it is that you then need to spend the other action to evade it. Now, there are cute things you can do with it now. You can make it fast, so you could use it during the with Chuck, right? Or Roland, well, parallel Roland. So you could use it during the upkeep phase. No, end of the enemy phase. I think there should be a window after enemies have attacked, so they could be exhausted. There's some interesting things you can do, but they're pretty marginal in my opinion. It's still just an okay card. Next, we have Backstab. This card has gotten better because it's easier to afford, and rogues are better at using agility than they used to be. I mean, look at it with just the context of the core set. How do you pass the test? You're at 4 with either Wendy or Skids. You need to commit some stuff, and it costs you 3 resources as it is. So it is not easy to use this until you have a card pool that supports it. And then it's quite good. So trending up is my vote. Switchblade never was good. The only niche that has now is probably Dexter, that this costs only 1. It's fast. It lets you switch something else into play instead. I mentioned before that, like, oh, we need things to be able to help succeed by 2. That's really hard to do when your base is 3. So Tony can use this okay, but he really wants to upgrade it. Um, I I get why it exists, but I think it probably needed to be a little bit better, or they print something different. Okay, next we have pickpocketing. So it's gotten better because it's an illicit card, and evading has gotten a lot better as well. The problem with my eyes on this now is that pickpocketing level 2 is way better than this, in my experience. It being fast is really good. But Kaimani, Finn, I'm gonna say this one has been trending up. I think that's fair to say. By the way, I know you can't see things on the other side of Relic Hunter now, so let's just start putting things on on this side. Okay. It's not as good as level 2, but that's okay, right? I think this is just a better idea of something to put in your deck if you are trying to succeed or by evading. And evasion strategies are legit now. 41 Derringer. You have to succeed by 2 or more to deal extra damage, but you get the +2. This is okay. It gets better with a bigger card pool where you can do this more easily. But it's not impossible for Skids to do it. I think it's just okay. Leo. Now there are 2 Leos. There's the level 0 that costs 6, and there's level 1 that costs 5. Leo DeLuca giving you an extra action every round is extremely good. In fact, I think people undervalue this just because of the resource cost is kind of crazy. But having having another action to deal with something just breaks a little bit of the game's curve, I think, which assumes that you only have 3. That doesn't mean that you're breaking the game by having extras. It just means that you're able to get around a few other problems. I'm gonna put him at the very top here. I don't think the extra action has lost its value over time. It takes up an ally slot, but I think it's still extremely good in every investigator who could take it. Level 1 version, I think, is just even better, but I don't think the 1 resource cost is enough for me to say that he's only just still good. Okay, lockpicks should have come out in the core. It did in the revised core. This is still one of the best cards. You throw this into pretty much every rogue, and they can pick up a couple clues. If you haven't played with lockpicks and haven't taken advantage of the succeed by X archetype, then you should try. But even like throwing opportunist into this is kind of weird, right? Like, why would you do it? What are you getting out of it? You're trying to avoid breaking one pick. For that 1 card, I think you need a lot more, and you get that with other skills in other sets. Cat Burglar. I still want to like this thing. It seems kind of neat. It's one of the very few low-level cards that gives you +1 agility. Disengage from each enemy engage with you and move to a connecting location. The effect is good, but I haven't really used this that much. Let's stick it into just okay. I don't think it's gotten any better. I wish it did. Like Kaimani, I thought was going to be make this a lot better, but that's not really what they want to do. They want to do the evade discard thing before leaving. But, the soak is good. The cost is fine. Still just okay. I'm going to put Leo back at the top as well. I think he's just one of the best. Like, especially with the charisma. I mean, I know maybe some of you saw me play Monterey Jack, parallel Monterey Jack, on the channel, and the difference between having Leo out and not, to sort of compound all of these extra action abilities that I had, to me was really big. So, yeah. The upgraded Derringer comes from Carcosa, and I think this card is still very good. I don't think it's necessarily gotten better. I mean, obviously it's really good with the better fighters, but it's better with dirty fighting now too. I'm gonna leave it into still good. Put it over here so you can see it. Next up, Sure Gamble. I think this card is also underplayed. So the ability is like Lucky, which we have yet to get to. We have to do Seeker and Survivor still. Oh boy. It's like Lucky but not, and it gives you abilities to pass tests by a lot, right? You draw -5 or something, and suddenly you have succeeded by 4 or 5 or something. It's really or more, like by 9. I think this card's gotten better, and I don't think people have been playing it, and they probably should be. There we go. It's gotten better because you can do riskier things, and the payoff for doing riskier things has gotten better over time. In other words, taking a big investigate action or something is something you can do with a larger card pool where you're saying, I'm going to succeed by, 2 or something with my 2 deduction 2s committed, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you didn't have that kind of power in the core. You were just using this to pass a Frozen in Fear, which is also good, but maybe not as good as doing a whole lot of other things. Let's keep moving on. Hot Streak level 4. I think this card is still extremely good. Probably not as good as it used to be since there are other ways to get resources, but it's hard to deny that getting a net 7 is very useful. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to leave it in still good because personally, this is one of those cards you want to double, which came out way later, and it can really get you out of a big hole if you lose a bunch or spend a bunch of resources. Again, there's other ways to do this, but I think this is still good. Old Book of Lore. Right, this is... we're into Seeker, but we've got the revised core cards first. I think this card is really good. It came out in Dream Eater, so it's kind of hard to talk about this in terms of over time. It's really good for Daisy, but we'll talk about the level 0 in a bit too. I think this is good in Mandy and probably a lot of other people who can take advantage of it. It's just a little bit awkward if you're not playing with tomes, and you usually aren't unless you're Daisy. I mean, this is hard to rate, like I said, because it hasn't been out that long. We'll throw it into still good. Barricade. It's gotten better. This is odd. It's gotten better because Luke, for one. Luke can do some funny things with this, but I think the ability to barricade yourself away from enemies has gotten better because they've designed campaigns where it makes more sense. I don't think it's a good card, but I don't think I want to put it into bad now. I actually think about putting it in my decks now, especially based on the campaigns. So I don't think it's just like okay. I actually kind of want to put it trending up, and I would love to see them make this more of an important card in the meta. I think they tried to. They really wanted you to. Ooh, this card. Mind Over Matter, letting you use your intellect in place of your combat and agility for a whole round. actually quite strong. It seems very unassuming. I'm gonna put it in still good. I don't think it's one of the best cards, but it its strength has basically stayed the same. You can still do some funny things. I've seen like Norman Withers do this, where he intends on using uh, with Brand of Cthulhu the combat, but then you replace it with your intellect. Instead of using your willpower, which is what you'd normally do, you can just use this instead. But evading or fighting enemies as a seeker is very strong, gets you out of trouble. The card is still good. I mean, you have to have a reason not to play Magnifying Glass. This is still one of the best. Put it up here. It's cheap. It's fast. It helps you do what you are trying to do all the time. Still play it. It's boring to play. Okay, so I have this bias towards I think agility has become more important over time. I think hyper awareness is a tough ask because it is kind of expensive, but this is a class where money comes pretty easily. Can come. I think this is okay. I think this one's still just So I put where did I put arcane? Okay, and physical training. They're very similar cards. Maybe it's trending up. Maybe I just kind of follow the pattern that I think these cards, while they're not good, I think they're gotten a little bit better, especially as you have more ways to get money. And I just like the other ones better. Okay, Seeking Answers came out in Harvey Walters, so it's actually not that old, and it became a reprint in the very next year's revised core set. A strange thing indeed. This is a cool card in Rex. Um, yeah, it can do some fun things in Luke as well. I think this is just still a good card for 2 XP. Again, hard to rate these revised core reprints. Next, Research Librarian. This one's just gotten better over time, right? More books to find, the better it is. I didn't used to play this, and now I have because you've got things like True Magic. You've got things like story assets that are books. It's if it's part of your strategy, and it can be for people who are not always playing with, the whole tome suite. I think this is very strong. Occult Lexicon, right? Another one. I'm gonna put Old Book of Lore, the level 0, into it being a bit niche for core. So I don't think you play this outside of Daisy. In Daisy, it's fantastic. You always play this. And if you played this outside of Daisy and had a good time with it, let me know. But I don't think your hand slots are uh, worth holding this if you're spending an action to draw one card at a time. The filter is really good, right? Filtering 1 out of 3 is really good. And using on other people, really good. But who else would want to play this? I really have no idea. Okay. Uh I mean, like one of the best allies in the game, Dr. Milan. Tabooed even, where his reaction is once per round. I think he was always really good. He's gotten better, of course, where you can use the resources to do a lot more things, but he's extremely useful. Level 1 Magnifying Glass is a little bit strange of a card, but it costs only 1 XP, so how can I put it anywhere but at the top, right? Nah, I don't know. No. Let's put it at still good. The reason why it makes it 1 cost cheaper. It has this funny ability to return to your hand. You can just do it, right? It doesn't really matter in the core set because you have nothing else to spend your XP on. But it nowadays I think you don't want to do it unless you really have to. Let's just put it in still good. Encyclopedia has gotten worse. This card, I'll put it up here, has been outclassed, I think, by other cards. So this gives you +2 to any skill for the rest of the round. I don't think the effect is bad. I just don't want to spend a hand slot, 2 resources, and more importantly, 2 XP to be able to do this whenever I want. Instead, there's a level 0 version that lets you do this 5 times. And that came out in Harvey Walters. So it really makes the level 2 version pale in comparison. Because how many rounds are there in Arkham Horror, right? Usually it's 12 to 15. The time you put this down, you probably don't use it. You want to use it on some future turn. It is worth, even the level 0 version, it's worth playing in more than just Daisy, I think, if you're playing somewhat of a support seeker, which is a little bit unusual. But it really is just for Daisy. I want to put it in trending down, but it's also a bit, to me, too Daisy to make it a good card. But I'm putting it there just because I think that the effect is not as useful for anyone but her. But, you know, I'm going to move it. It's got some cool things you can do with Abigail Foreman, but and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have printed these sorts of things entirely, but it's hard to evaluate them when really only one investigator wants them. Disc of Insomnia. This one could be played anywhere. I'm going to put this one in trending down. The card is good. Don't get me wrong. Non-elite enemy you just put in the discard pile. There are a lot of big enemies, especially at the end of a campaign, where you can just eliminate that problem without spending an action. Now, you spend the action up front, right? There aren't as many ways to fill your accessory slot in Seeker, so maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe it's not a good card. It's a good card, just like Working a Hunch is. But ultimately, I think because it solves only one enemy, you want to have other plans for the other ones, and those plans can be more repeatable than just spending one card. Playing solo, maybe 2-player, this is better, but in 3 and 4-player, I think you just rely on someone else to deal with the problem. But it is somewhat powerful, I think. Not a bad card at all. There's a level 0 version too, which actually it automatically evades the enemy or deals 2 damage to it, which actually could be solving the problem itself. So there we go. That can be my solution to the problem. Ooh, cryptic research. Draw 3 fast. There's other ways to do this now, but this is no questions asked. This is probably still one of the best cards. Let's put it right at the top. Eucatastrophe also came out in Circle Undone. It's been tabooed because it's a powerful effect, canceling an auto fail, making an Elder Sign. It's a little odd to put it in the core because Wendy kind of has that ability on her card. Where do I want to put this? I think this is still a good card. I don't think it's one of the best. I think it's still good. I play that often, especially in New York, or anyone else who can use the Elder Sign. Even removing it from the game with the taboo, I think it's fine. Survival Instinct. This is trending up. I think this card is better than people give it credit for, and moving with your evade is quite good, and there's more investigators who can take advantage of this 3 def for 1, right? Lucky. Ooh. It's one of the best cards. It's maybe gotten a little bit worse over time because passing with other effects, I think, is possible. You've got like Pocket Multi-Tool for 1, but just having this, I'm going to leave it in still good. I don't think it quite holds up to the cards that are up here. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed not to put it into your deck, but I think that's true of a lot of these cards in still good. Just don't think it's that top tier for me. What about you, Leather Coat? Next one. Nope, you're not the next one. Look what I found is. Always was good. It's still good now. The effect is powerful. 2 cards, 2 clues, 1 action, 1 card. With difficulty reduction, I suppose it's been getting better. So let's put in trending up, because now you can get things off of higher shroud locations than just two. Cunning distraction. So this was not a great card because of its cost. I think it's gotten better because more people are going to want to spend money on it, but just a few. I wonder if this is a bit too niche or it's still just okay. I think the effect is quite good. I think we're going to leave it in still just okay. But it's just so darn expensive. I can see for core Wendy could play from her discard pile, but uh, I don't know. I don't know. It could be either of these. Your mileage may vary. Leather coat. It's better with Tommy. It's a solid card. Are there better things you can do? Not at level 0. I think this is still a good card. I think you include this with uh, a lot of survivors that have item synergy. Not that this costs anything, but you're able to pick this out much more easily. We're almost done. Rabbit's Foot. This card has gotten better because of Stella. Preston. I think it's kind of stalled out. Don't think you want to play Calvin. Okay, I'll give it to trending up. I don't think it's still on the way up, but I think in the original core, you were just playing it because you didn't have anything else to do, and you could fail with Wendy, I suppose, and draw your look what I found off of this and play it. It's just not really part of her coherent strategy, in my opinion. Stray Cat, I think, is still good. Maybe still just okay. It's actually a really good effect because you're able to evade enemies, engage with other investigators, which is honestly not something that happens that often. The creature deck in general, you know, I think this part is probably underrated. It's just taking up an ally slot, which is annoying. We're gonna stick it into still good. Dig deep. I'm gonna say that this one is not as good as the others. Um, I think it's okay. And I don't think it's as bad as Hard Knocks. It's okay for Agnes. I'm gonna leave it in still just okay. Hard Knocks, it's never spoken to me as like this is the card to put in your deck, even the level 2 or 4 version. The other ones I have found some homes for. Dig Deep sort of pales in comparison, I think, with the other three. Even Hyper Awareness I've actually found lots of success with. Anyway, let's keep going so we can finish off this video real soon. We have Aquina level 1, which is not a good card. So this one, you have to deal horror to her and then deal the damage to a different enemy. So you need two enemies there. It's the oops level 0 problem. She's so expensive. I don't think this is a good card, and it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten a teeny tiny bit better with Daniela, but I think you're going to use the level 3 version instead, which we'll talk about. And then we look at Lucky level 2. This one's trending down. Why? The difference between this and Lucky level 0 is 2 XP, and you draw a card. However, for 1 more XP, if you're a survivor, you'd have access to survivor level 3 is Lucky level 3. No, the real reason why this is trending down is because your 2 XP can go a lot more somewhere else. Drawing 1 card as being the only thing that you get between the 2 versions is not really good. I've got a video about this somewhere on the channel about differences between 0 and 2 XP cards. You really see a lot more on the newer upgrades. This is a pretty this is not a very valuable upgrade in my opinion. So it's gotten worse just because there's other things you can do. Early on you didn't. It's not that 1 card is bad, it's just not good enough. I have never played Close Call. Play after a non-weakness, non-elite enemy at your location is evaded, so it doesn't have to be you doing the evasion. Shuffle that enemy into the encounter deck. All right, so we've got other similar effects out there. We have Persuasion. You do a test to do that. Parlay test, which can be difficult. Costs 2 resources and is 0 XP. We've got Dumb Luck, level 0. After you fail the evasion attempt, you put it on top. Level 2, put it on bottom. There might be some other things that shuffle enemies into the encounter deck, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So, how does this work? Shuffle it into the encounter deck after you successfully evade. Sorry, after it is evaded. Different timing point. I've never been tempted by it. I don't think it's a bad card. Let's put it in still just okay. Again, notably, this is a better card in my opinion than like Dig Deep level 0. I want to reiterate this point. I don't think those talents are particularly good cards, but they do serve a certain purpose when you have money and you're trying to hit the breakpoints of a chaos back. And you're saying, okay, being up 3 is way better than being up 2. I will spend my 1 resource to get there. Okay, rant over. I think this card's okay. It's just not something I've ever been tempted to do. You're going to want to do this. Okay, here's the problem with this is the persuasion is solving the enemy using your intellect. Dumb Luck, 0 and 2. You solve the enemy because you failed. You can benefit by failing doing other things, but you failed the test. This one, you succeeded the test, but then you remove the enemy from play. This is only good if the enemy has so much health that you can't get rid of it that quickly. And it's going to ready and then attack you or something. I mean, you just evaded them. How important is that? Or there's doom on them or something else that getting them off the table and the tokens off of them is more important. I'm going to leave it as just okay, but I don't think this card is quite good. I'm still not convinced that I would want to play this. I don't mind shuffling enemies back to the encounter deck. I think that's fine. But if you already succeeded the test, spending 2 more resources to remove from the table, I mean, there are some enemies where you want to do that. It's just not going to happen that often. I'm not even sure I want to put it on niche. Like, for sure you want to use it in the Forgotten Age to remove some of those snakes, but I'm done talking about the card. Aquina, level 3. This one costs 1 less, and you deal the damage to any enemy, including the one that just attacked you. Pretty good. If you are a fighter and you don't need or don't have Beat Cop or other allies, I mean, there aren't many allies in Survivor really that assist you with fighting. Jessica Hyde, notable counterexample to that, but otherwise, I think this is kind of doing what you want to do to basically do extra damage, because your weapons or you don't have vicious blow or whatever. I think this has gotten better. Again, Daniela, I've seen it do some good work in Hank. You need a way to deal with the extra horror that you took, though. So if someone does like 2 damage and 2 horror to you, you need a place to soak the horror. And we don't have that in the core set, but in other sets you do. I guess you've got the Elder Sign Amulet. All right. That's it. Let's take a look at the whole list. Now that we put everything here. All of our still one of the best cards. I don't even think they're necessarily overplayed. They're staples, right? The still good ones are also staples. But you have to think a little bit about the team, maybe your investigator, maybe there's some better options, but they're still extremely good. The trending up ones, I think the new investigators, new play styles have emerged that make these cards even better. A few that you can quibble with here. Trending down, I'm not sure how many of these were that great to begin with, but certainly a few of them have lost their niche in the card pool. Still just okay. I can see reasons to play them, and I've played most of them. The ones that I haven't, I think, are still okay. Nothing wrong with a bit niche for core. The cards are probably fine where they, in the investigators that really want them, but otherwise, they're not going to probably see much play. And then the last set, thankfully, there's not too many, right? It's like a pretty good accomplishment. Um, I don't think you ever want to try to put these in your deck. Very few reasons to be just filling things out, I guess. Scrying level 0, I have played in Gloria, but uh, really, I guess for the arcane research, you have it there. Maybe that's it to save on the 3 XP cost, but I don't really want to use it. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I might do this again in the future for some other investigator boxes, but I think this is an important one to talk about for the core itself because it says something about the core set, right? These are supposed to be cards that you might want to put into any deck in the future. Always having access to them is to make the other investigators even playable, I think, is a big thing. So it's good to see so many that I think, anyways, are trending up. All right, thanks all for watching. I'll see you next time.